Hey everybody, thank you for joining us today. Uh, hope you're looking forward to some entertainment during your lunch break. We really set this up as a live stream because in the last few weeks in particular, there's been so many folks who have approached us with this problem around their IT service desk in particular, and the issues that they're having around social engineering and mostly identity-based attacks. And today we'll talk about Scattered Spider, which is a group of folks who've been doing a lot of this bad stuff, and we will be talking about why they're so successful, tactics that they use, and ultimately how we can prevent them from being successful in the future as an industry. So the good news is there's plenty of process and technology and capability to resolve many of these threats right now. The bad news is they require some work. And so we'll talk about some of the easiest ways that companies can do this today. First and foremost, though, just for the folks who are not super familiar, who the heck is Scattered Spider as a group? Well, they are a hacker group that is who are specialists in social engineering and phishing in particular, and we'll talk about their tactics much more today. But they tend to be very, very successful. And in recent weeks and months and years, they have been extremely successful getting into some of the best known brands in the industry. So several airlines, major insurance companies, all these folks have been a victim of Scattered Spider through these methods that typically take advantage of the fact that humans tend to be the weakest link in any cybersecurity program. And one of the things that's become more known recently is Scattered Spider in particular is used as a outsourcing agency for many of these more prominent hacking groups. And so if you're a hacking group that's really good at ransomware, for example, but you're not so good at social engineering, you can outsource that service to Scattered Spider. Scattered Spider will go out, do social engineering, phishing, and they will get credentials to get a hacker's foot in the door at many of these organizations. And then the hacking group that specializes in ransomware will then do what they do and install ransomware, move laterally, and do all these things. So these are just some of the attacks that that have been perpetrated very recently. And as you can see, many of these are in April, May, June, July. So they kind of go industry by industry. So they went after retailers, then after airlines, then after insurance companies, and they just kind of keep switching tactics in industries every few weeks or every few months, wherever they're finding success. So let's talk about how they're doing this stuff. So this is a diagram that's largely based off of the great work that Google has been doing, researching these folks, the folks at Google Security. And most of the time, Scattered Spider finds their way into organization using a identity-based attack method. So the number one that they like to use is social engineering of the IT help desk, which we'll talk about much more. And once they get their foot in the door at these organizations, they're typically also stealing credentials using social engineering, ransomware, or keyloggers or other software to get more access across the organization and ultimately live off the land and eventually exfiltrate intellectual property, disable security tools, create additional accounts, or deploy ransomware, or whatever else they like to do. So the first tactic that we'll talk about from Scattered Spider is a favorite, and it's actually on the phishing side, which is push bombing. So if you're not familiar with what push bombing is, if you're using MFA today at work, chances are it works by you putting in a password and then getting a push notification in your Okta Verify Duo app or whatever else you're using, Microsoft Authenticator, where you say accept or deny. And Scattered Spider has gotten really good at doing stuff like figuring out a person's password by guessing it or taking it from a previously breached database, or maybe phishing it from the employee using a fake website. And then push bombing the employee by sending them many push notification requests. And they'll typically couple this with additional social engineering tactics, like they'll find the person's phone number and they'll message them on WhatsApp or a similar channel, and they'll say, hey, this is your IT security team. We just sent you a push notification. You should accept it because we're doing some sort of test, or we need to verify your account or whatever else. And many times employees will just blindly accept it and click it, and then that will give a session into that organization. And then once they have a session, then they can access different applications, different resources, look for additional credentials, and then spread throughout the environment. The second tactic is phishing of credentials. I talked about this just a minute ago, but this is where they'll use commonly available phishing kits like EvilGenX or Maldishka or others. There's awesome YouTube videos by us and by others on this topic of using phishing kits to harvest credentials that you should check out. But it's really, really simple, where they'll create a website that looks just like the company's, Okta or Microsoft login, but it really won't be. There'll be a letter off in the URL or something similar, and the hacking group hosts that infrastructure. And so when the employee goes in to log into what they think is their single sign-on provider, they're really logging into the hacker's infrastructure. The hacker will take the session that's created, pass along those credentials, and then get access to that user's account. So this is primarily successful because we have phishable factors as an industry for the most part, like passwords, one-time codes, or push notifications. And so they'll get then access into the company's single sign-on system, or maybe their VPN, and they'll have a lot more visibility and exposure to the corporate network. The third and tactic that we're going to discuss today, and probably the one that's getting the most attention lately in particular, is they're picking up the phone, tried and true, and doing social engineering. So it's really, really simple. They pick up the phone and they call the company IT service desk number, and they'll say, hey, this is John, or whatever the person they want to be is. I'll say, I'm locked out of my account. I need to reset my MFA. What information do you need to do that? And the help desk person is there to help. So they'll say something like, well, John, we need the last 4 your social and the date that you started at the company. These are typically knowledge-based questions that companies are requiring. And the hacker will just then hang up, and they'll go do that research. They'll find the last 4 of John's social, and they'll find the date that he started, probably from LinkedIn. And then they'll call back and answer those questions and then get access into the account, right? And so companies have tried to implement controls around this instead of just asking basic questions, where they'll say like, hey, John, we're going to send a push to your Okta app or something like that, and you need to verify yourself before we change your password or give you a new one. But then the hacker can just say, I lost my phone. And then most of the times companies fall back to knowledge-based factors, right? Because the reality is the vast majority of employees these days are remote. That's going to stay that way for the foreseeable future. And driving into an office to change your password just isn't operationally very efficient, and it's not the right thing to do for most companies. So how do we actually stop these things? So we'll talk about a few different tactics and actions that companies can take. And then we'll jump into a couple of demonstrations of what this actually looks like from an end user perspective. So the first thing that we want to stop is Scattered Spider at that initial compromise stage, which is where they're harvesting credentials to get access to the system. So long story short here is if your organization is relying on a credential that can be typed, communicated over the phone, or copy and paste it anywhere, chances are hackers can get access to that by social engineering and phishing. So push notifications can be intercepted, right? One-time codes can be phished or socially engineered. All these traditional methods, or dare I say legacy methods of doing MFA, are suddenly vulnerable to these types of attacks, right? And so essentially what you need to do, and this is guidance from various organizations like NIST and even the U.S. government and other governments have issued guidance that says, hey, you should be using a FIDO certified authentication method or a certificate-based authentication method that doesn't rely on a shared secret. And basically, it says use a FIDO certified mobile authenticator, use a FIDO certified hardware authenticator like a YubiKey or something similar, or use a smart card functionality that has a FIDO authenticator or a certificate-based logon built into it. And so many organizations have provided some of these capabilities to some percentage of their workforce, but the issue is if these more secure methods don't work, most organizations tend to fall back to a less secure method, right? And the hackers are always going to find the path of least resistance. So as long as you have a phishable factor available as an option for end users, that's what the hackers are going to try to get. So the key rule here is make sure that these legacy methods that we discussed are never the fallback, and it's never available as a fallback. Otherwise, you'll deploy something and find yourself right back where you started. Tactic number 2 and preventative action that we'll discuss is how do you stop social engineering that's being done by Scattered Spider. And this is really like how do you secure the help desk and how do you secure other employees from being social engineered. So the number one thing you can do is stop relying on knowledge-based questions and answers. It's super trivial for AI or for a person with just a little bit of skill to figure out the last 4 of your social, your pet, your dog's name, or whatever the security questions are. And we've seen hackers doing this in interesting ways where before they try to trick the help desk, they'll call the employee and they'll say, hey, this is your IT security team. I just want to verify your security questions. Can you answer what's the last 4 of your social and what's your dog's name? And then the employee will be like, well, sure, IT security team. Here's my answers. And then that hacker will hang up. They'll call the help desk and they'll say, hey, this is John. Here's my last 4 of my social and here's my dog's name, which is a really interesting approach and one that they're finding a lot of success with. And so the trick is to make sure that you're not relying on knowledge-based factors to verify people, and making sure that you have a strong multi-factor identity verification system in place whenever people are changing their password, doing MFA re-enrollments, or any type of highly privileged function. Right. This is also where stopping insider threat can become really much more simplified too. So what many of our customers are doing and what most companies are doing these days who really have been bit by this spider bug is they are essentially removing the credential reset capability from the help desk, and they're providing a self-service option to do this, to do a credential reset or anything like that. And so that's something that we'll demonstrate here in a few minutes. And then 3 is how do you stop them from moving laterally? And this is where it gets a little bit more technical. So let's assume that somebody from Scattered Spider has successfully phished an employee, and now they are in the environment. They're on the VPN. They see all the internal infrastructure. The first thing they try to do is move laterally. How do I get more access to more things so that I can get more data and do more damage and have a bigger payout? And so this is where not just having strong security controls from an identity perspective at the front door, is enough, but you have to have these phishing-resistant, strong authentication methods into all the downstream things that are of consequence. So this is where you can require stronger access in order to do remote desktop sessions, in order to access Linux servers via SSH or other methods. This is where replacing long-lived API tokens with standards-based token issuance, making sure that even if somebody from ScatterSpider or one of these hacking groups was to land on a corporate laptop with access to the corporate network, that they can't go very far with that. That's the critical piece here, and making sure that employees are never typing a credential into that endpoint is really critical, because as long as there's a credential to type in, there's a chance that a piece of malware or a keylogger can harvest that credential and then use it to move laterally through the environment. So real quick summary is here. I won't read it bullet by bullet, but phishing resistant authentication is critical. It's the major part of any zero trust identity strategy. It's probably also the one that requires the most change management, frankly, because you have to change the authentication method that people are using. Right? If they're using a push or OTP, they can't do that anymore. If they're using a password, they shouldn't be doing that anymore. So that user change piece is typically the most difficult from a change management perspective. And then making sure that this authentication method is applied to all these use cases and that you never fall back to insecure methods. And then also making sure that the IT help desk cannot be socially engineered, right? That they're not asking basic questions or any questions really to authenticate the user over the phone. With that, we will jump into some demonstrations and then we'll wrap it up. So the first demo I'm going to show you is what it looks like from a help desk perspective and a end user perspective of how do you verify yourself to a help desk person without using knowledge-based questions. All right, so I'll show you here. I'll play a video, but I'll walk you through it. So what you'll see here is an employee, they will get, before they call the help desk, or if they call the help desk, they'll be sent a link. Okay, they'll be texted, emailed, carrier pigeon issued, whatever the communication method is. They'll be sent a link. And when they click that link, it'll open up a browser, either on their phone or on their computer, and it'll say like, hey, here's the things we're going to verify about you. We're going to verify your phone number, your location, your ID document. And in this case, they're using HYPR, and the technology is hooked into their Workday or whatever their system of record is as an organization. So the employee will go in. Due to legal reasons, since this is collecting some personal information, they'll have to accept the terms and conditions, and then they'll have to put in their corporate email address. All right, so the employee is going to put in their email address, and then once they do that, we'll ask them to verify their phone number. Right, so it'll say like, hey, your phone number ends in 966, put it in here, and then we'll send them a OTP. On its own, this is a pretty low fidelity check, but it's the initial gate in order to proceed to the next step of the verification process. And all of these steps are configurable for organizations, because sometimes you don't want to verify a person's phone number, you want to do other checks. Next thing we'll do is we'll verify the person's location, right? And so sometimes companies use this to make sure that the person is who they say they are and that they're coming from the right place. And then once we verify their location, we'll ask them to scan their driver's license in this case, but it could be any document from any country. So they'll go on their mobile device, they'll scan that QR code, and they'll take a picture of the front and back of their driver's license. Now, once they take the picture of their front and back of their driver's license, we'll also ask them to do a selfie match. So what it'll do is it'll compare the picture that's on their driver's license with the selfie that they take. So this is just an additional check. And so at this point, what we've done is we verify that the person has access to the right phone number. We verify that they're in the city, state, country that they're supposed to be in. And we have verified their government issued ID and compared that ID with a face that was a picture that was taken of that person's face. And then what we'll do is we'll give the person a PIN. And so what this PIN is, or this little code here, what they can do with that then is they can call up the help desk and they'll say, hey, I need to change my password, or I need to enroll into my MFA. Help desk will say, what's your PIN or what's your code? And then the help desk person can take that code from the employee, they can punch it in, and they can see all of the things that have been verified about that individual and when they were verified. So they'll see, hey, this person has been approved, I have a green light. And by the way, they're 6 miles away from their home address. Their document verification has passed. We verified their phone number, so on and so forth. And then the help desk person can continue to help that individual, right? So this is, instead of asking them for the last four of their social or whatever other questions the company policy might impose, now they can just ask them for this code. The person provides this code, and they can see when that code was issued, how it was issued, and they have confidence that the person that they're talking to is the person that they're issuing that new credential to. So really slick capability. Help desk teams really like this because it makes their life easier, right? They don't have to sit there and go back and forth and find more questions if the person doesn't know what car they drove in 2007, so on and so forth. And the fact that we are checking multiple factors here, their phone number, their location, and their document, gives us a lot of confidence that this person is who they say they are, rather than just checking one of those controls, right? Because if the person, if you're just validating the person's driver's license, for example, fake IDs are getting really good, deepfakes are getting really good. Requiring multiple steps, multiple factors is critical to verify people remotely. So that's what you can do from a help desk perspective. This whole flow is obviously fully self-service as well. So you can, after the person is verified successfully, instead of issuing them a help desk code here, we can actually take them straight to their MFA enrollment screen or their password reset screen, whatever it is. It's all up to you how you want to configure it. Okay. So that's on the identity verification side. How do we prevent social engineering at the help desk level? The second demo I'm going to show you is how users can log into their workstations without having to use a shareable credential. So in this demonstration, what you'll see here is a person is going to push a button on their phone. They're going to do their Face ID or Touch ID, and then it's going to log them into their computer. The critical user experience piece that most people miss here is that when this user logs into this computer, they are never responding to a push notification. So if you notice, they initiate the login into the computer from their phone, kind of like you would to open your garage door or unlock your car. It works the same way. The user is not responding to a push. And this applies to computer login as well as any sort of web login. So that essentially makes sure that the threat of push bombing is never there because the user never gets a push notification to accept. And so this prevents the entire chain of phishing attacks that Scattered Spider and other similar groups like to deploy. And so it's really critical that organizations think about how can I have a phishing resistant way of authenticating into my endpoint, and how do I never fall back to a weaker factor? And that's the critical thing. Many of our customers and even us personally, we use Windows Hello on our laptops. But then if you want to go to a conference room and use the computer there, or you want to log into a virtual desktop or into a remote desktop, how do you also make sure that that is passwordless and that is phishing resistant? That's where having a roaming mobile authenticator like the one that you see here is really important, because you never want to find yourself in a situation where people have to fall back to a password, right? Or back to a knowledge-based factor. So that's the critical piece here is how do you make sure that all of those edge cases are supported so that users never have to fall back to something that they can share with an adversary over the phone or really with anyone. So with that, I will stop and thank you for your time today. And if you have any questions, please reach out anytime. The last thing that I will show you here is if you go to hypr.com, there is a try affirm button right here. And this essentially gives you up to 5 verifications for HYPR affirm for free. And so you don't have to talk to anybody at HYPR to try it. You don't have to send any complex emails or requests or permissions to get a tenant up and running for you. Essentially, you just go to this link and you can try the experience of what it looks like to be verified using this more secure method for yourself up to 5 times for free. All you need is to put in your email address. And that's it. So I hope you find it useful. I hope you give it a shot. Let us know any feedback that you have. And thank you so much for dialing in today.